Good morning. I used to be a loyal subscriber of tons of beauty YouTubers when I was in middle school. I would watch these videos and I would learn things like how to pick my perfect shade of lip gloss and finding just the right foundation for my undertone. After watching maybe hundreds of these videos, I found out about a really popular tip amongst this beauty community: learning how to contour your nose to make it look smaller. When these YouTubers did close-up shots of the nose that they've achieved and the illusions that they've created, I couldn't help but notice how different my nose was from the one that they were trying to achieve. As a South Asian person, I've heard a lot of things about my distinctly Pakistani nose: that it's big, it's crooked, it has a bump in the bridge, which are all undeniably true things. But there's always a certain negative tone taken on when talking about these features of mine. And not to mention that a lot of these judgments about my nose comes from people who have noses that look just like mine. It's frankly ridiculous that we're so critical of something that simply allows us to breathe. With the standards of beauty today only becoming more extreme, it's led to the creation of a lot of sub-labels of discrimination. Just think of this as a lot of isms. There's colorism, meaning the preference for a lighter skin color, which has inevitably led to skin bleaching. There's texturism, meaning the discrimination against people with coarser, curlier, and afro-textured hair, which has inevitably led to people chemically straightening their hair to the point of unfixable damage. And all of these terms fall under the umbrella term featureism, meaning the societal acceptance of certain features over others. And this standard created by featureism can be seen in all parts of the face and even in the body. It's seen in the standard for upturned noses, light eyes, big eyes, light skin, full lips, but not too big, and tall and slender figures. And this list only ever seems to grow longer. Within all these isms fits a common theme: people with features indicative of their ethnic backgrounds being told to undergo unfixable change in order to fit into a certain status quo. To understand where the standard stems from, we need to go back. And I mean all the way back to really understand it. In the case of me and my nose, this standard stemmed from when the British colonized South Asia and left behind a very specific beauty standard that only a few people could live up to, also known as the Eurocentric beauty standard. This is defined as a viewpoint in which European culture and appearance is looked upon favorably against non-Western civilizations. When it comes to noses, the noses Europeans typically have and the noses South Asians typically have couldn't be any more opposite to one another. Europeans, with their smaller, straight-bridged, upturned noses. To South Asians, usually much larger, hooked noses that turn downwards at the end, or to call it by its proper term, the aquiline nose. This massive difference in our appearances to our colonizers is where featureism begins to rear its ugly nose. While this is the case specifically for South Asia, a common story can be seen amongst many third world countries. They were colonized by European nations, and a standard of whiteness and brightness was left behind. A study from UC Riverside found that the reason why people of color undergo physical changes as a response to the racism that they've faced is because of internalized shame. Shame is a health function that helps people change their behavior depending on the way the people they surround themselves with react to them and their actions. When someone undergoes discrimination or isolation because of the features they have, it leads to the process of wanting to assimilate. Between Eurocentric beauty standards and the internalized shame that comes as a response to it, it has become prevalent in society to pander to these standards of beauty. It can be seen in the media catered towards children and teenagers, with protagonists that are typically white and antagonists that are typically coded to be of a certain minority group. Think Mother Gothel from Rapunzel, a Jewish caricature having an exaggerated nose. Jafar from Aladdin being the spitting image of Orientalism. And this concept doesn't even end at people. Have you ever noticed that in The Lion King, Scar is the character with the darkest color palette? Constantly portraying minorities with evident ethnic features as something negative ingrains an image that being of ethnic descent is inherently bad, and that people should try to be like the Eurocentric main character that appeals to Eurocentrism. Now that we understand where this standard stems from, let's wipe our noses of that and sniff out the role assimilation has played in the self-perception of minorities. With the racism that they've encountered and the shame that comes with it, this is where people not want to be so different anymore. This is where cultural assimilation comes into play, which is the process in which a minority group assumes the values or behaviors of a majority group, whether fully or partially. In the case of Eurocentrism, this can mean ethnicities getting rid of their ethnic features in order to fit into the status quo. The process of assimilation is one that can be started before one even knows their ABCs. It was for me. It was in the way that I would have tried to shape my nose bridge by applying pressure from my fingers as if that would change the shape of bone and cartilage. It's in the way parents teach their kids to point their noses upwards in hopes of it permanently staying that way. When the standard that you're taught to abide by since seemingly the beginning of time is nothing like the way you actually look, the desire to assimilate only grows stronger and stronger. And with that is when people of color turn to cosmetic surgery to alleviate themselves of this issue. No one should be ashamed of the features that symbolize where they come from, but it has become increasingly difficult in today's society when this beauty standard is on every magazine and on every celebrity, and we're now witnessing the rapid normalization of people going under the knife to also look like them. Since 1997, the rates of cosmetic surgery have risen 743% amongst all cosmetic procedures, specifically noting that these rates have skyrocketed amongst all races, with the exception of Caucasian communities. To be quite frank, that statistic makes perfect sense to me. I myself wanted a rhinoplasty for a really long time. It was hard to accept my features for what they were when all around me, I saw people with features just like mine getting cosmetic surgery done to rid themselves of these features. People across entire ethnicities as a whole are taught that these features are something that they should be erased. When you type South Asian noses into the Google search bar, the first results that come up are plastic surgery clinics advertising how they can give you an Indian rhinoplasty, and South Asian women lamenting on why they chose to get a nose job. These features cannot even merely exist on someone else's face without the assertion from someone else that it's something that needs to be changed. Thus, we have to look at the stigma of what getting cosmetic surgery typically means. In and of itself, it's done to conform to a standard of what other people consider to be beautiful. People often validate their desire to get cosmetic surgery by saying that they're doing it for themselves. But that's only after society has taught them that there's only one way to be considered beautiful. And we often say that they are getting these procedures to fix insecurities. But we need to open our eyes and realize that for people of color, a lot of times fixing insecurities is synonymous with looking more white. Although this has been the standard that we have been taught to abide by our entire lives, it's pertinent that now more than ever, we take strides into overcoming these beauty standards. We cannot accept the world for what it is, but rather, be the change that we are willing to see. Change starts with us, and that very sentiment can be seen in the movements created globally in order to fight against the Eurocentric beauty standards. The first movements where this notion can be seen is the Black is Beautiful and natural hair campaigns made by Black women in efforts to combat racism and texturism. These movements were and are about embracing the beauty of your natural physical self, whether that be your skin color, your facial features, or your hair. These movements marked the unified attempt in no longer wanting to assimilate into white society, and to be proud of your natural self. In a similar vein, South Asians have launched the Unfair and Lovely campaign to disregard the colorism that has plagued South Asian society for centuries. The name of the movement itself is a play on words of the popular skin bleach brand Fair and Lovely. This movement is about celebrating darker-skinned individuals and rejecting the colorism that has been so prevalent in our society before. And among the South Asian diaspora, it has become increasingly popular to get your nose pierced. It's both a celebration of where we come from and rejecting the standards that we have lived by before. Aside from social movements, there have been breakings into every industry that we see in our day-to-day. In media that we consume, it has become increasingly popular to see characters of different ethnic backgrounds, where they speak about these topics and what they faced, stepping away from that standard of whiteness we are so used to seeing in our media. We have people of color in writing rooms and directing, ensuring that our appearances are no longer the butt of the joke, but rather that we can be at the height of beauty as well, and more importantly, that we're deserving of the same respect as our white counterparts. And we have people of color in the beauty industry, the very industry that helped create these standards in the first place, whether that be through creating makeup brands with inclusive shade ranges and products catered towards minority features, or it be in the models used for these campaigns. It's proof that we can occupy the same spaces we once thought only white people could. This is proof that when we work to rewire our mindsets, that beauty standards are less pervasive. European features have been the norm for so long that it's only right that ethnic features gain that same validation as well in order to foster less insecurity. But to truly decolonize our features, the change starts with ourselves. It starts with reevaluating our mental schemas, or the way we process and gather information. It can be in stopping surrounding yourself with people who talk negatively about their ethnic features and positively. Or it could be taking it even a step further and calling out this negative language you hear amongst your peers. It can be in closing out social media when you see the 100th trend showing off the slope of your nose or how big your eyes are or some other Eurocentric beauty standard. You are in control of the media that you consume, and you can choose whether or not you want to surround yourself with these ideas. And as cliche as it sounds, learn to speak positively about the things you once thought so negatively about yourself, even if you don't believe it at first. This is to attempt to rewire the code that you've been living by in the past. We each have our own individual choices to make. The standards have been set and strides have been made, but it's on each and every one of us to change what we consider to be beautiful. It is our responsibility to shift this standard. We're slowly but surely entering a day and age where we can gain both admiration and validation for the features we have, both from those who look like us and those who don't. And you can trust me on that. I'm nothing like Pinocchio, and my nose hasn't grown one bit throughout my speech. Thank you.